Hello everyone, and welcome to the SaaS Developer Channel. With me today, Tejas, who is a co-CEO of Hightouch, and he's here with us as an expert on reverse-ETL, explaining the concept and all the cool things that people do with it. So, very happy to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on the show, Gwen. Hey everyone, I'm Tejas, one of the founders of Hightouch, and we basically help companies take all the data they're compiling in their data warehouse, like Snowflake or Amazon Redshift, and analyzing in tools like Looker or Mode or other BI tools. And we help them get way more value of that data by moving it to the different SaaS systems like Salesforce or Zendesk or Marketo that their different business teams use around the company. So
That's a
excited to be on the
fantastic
show.
description. I like that.
Nice.
Something that all founders aspire to is have such a snappy description of what they do.
I can't say I have not practiced it. So
Exactly. So you founded the company about 2 years ago. Did you start out as a reverse ETL company?
no, we didn't start out, while I left Segment to found Hightouch, and a lot of people assume, oh, since he left Segment, he probably just left exactly with this idea to build Hightouch and just, uproot the entire space of data integration. And while that's a great story that we might use from time to time, and our experience at Segment did definitely inspire a lot of what we created at Hightouch, it wasn't such a simple journey. Actually, when I initially left Segment, we were working on a travel company. So my co-founder Kashish and I were actually working on a travel company. We did YC for it, and about 8-9 months later, COVID struck, and we started to think, oh no, we need to completely pivot our business and choose a new idea. So we actually started working initially on this customer support idea, and the name Hightouch was built because it was really going to use data to allow companies to have really high touch, which is like a customer support term, meaning personal relationships with their customers through using data. So that's how we got to the name initially. As we kind of went out to the market, we realized that we didn't need to build a new support system or customer success system. What we need to do is help these teams use data better. The communication tools were fine. There's some things to be desired, but they were fine. The real problem was helping those teams get access to data. So we actually started to build a SaaS to help companies build this like internal customer dashboard, similar to one that we had at Segment to use internally. In Segments where I worked before, where you can pull up a customer and see everything about them, from all your sales information to support information to billing to product usage in one place, and had really good search and stuff like this. But as we started to take it to market, we realized that customers actually, wanted to not have this new system to see data. They wanted to instead get better ways to use all the existing data they were putting together in their data warehouse in all the tools they already had. So that's where Hightouch really came about.
Got it. So basically, all along they had the kind of message, hey, we just need all our data in our existing familiar tools. They're fine, they just need more data. And you kind of tried several things until you're like, okay, if that's what you want, I'm building the thing the market actually wants.
Yeah, honestly, the way you phrased it really struck a nerve for me. I would say that our experience working in the data integration space may have caused us to not jump to Hightouch as fast as someone who is completely new to the space may have, because we felt, oh, isn't it similar to other data integration software out there? Isn't it maybe a feature of Segment or some other sort of data integration platform out there that we previously worked with or worked on? And um, but what we realized were the customers were really telling us this is a problem they had. They had all this rich data in the data warehouse. They had analysts that were able to, munch and crunch and query this data and build reports, but they didn't have a good way of operationalizing the data and just actually allowing business teams to use it. The best thing data analysts could do to get their sales or marketing teams to use data is say, hey, download the CSV or refresh this Looker report when you're in need of data. And we realized there was an opportunity to focus on that audience, so not focus on engineers, not focus on giving less technical people like coding UI or anything like that. Really focus on the data analyst, the person creating reports in tools, and data engineers, and help them automate their SQL queries to like better power different business teams in the tools they live in. So I think once we realized that data teams were blowing up and they really needed a new tool to help like activate their data instead of just analyze it, we decided to just focus on that audience and build a company around that.
Why didn't the old tools work for that? I mean, most data engineering teams were kind of up to their knees in ETL tools, but what was wrong with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So honestly, like I would say how the industry's evolved is that ETL tools are now basically data replication tools for the most part. So if you look at a tool like Fivetran, what they help with is connecting to all these different SaaS services that you have in your business, like Salesforce, Zendesk, Marketing Cloud, Facebook ads, whatever it is, and getting all that data into your data warehouse. But when you think about ETL and like replicating that data into a data warehouse, it's actually much simpler technical process than helping teams go the other way around, or helping teams put data into different systems in really particular specific ways. That's a process that has a lot more cardinality than,
So
let's
you're
just say,
saying that
dumping in
getting
the
data
warehouse.
into Salesforce and Marketo is harder than getting data out of them?
Exactly. That's my personal opinion. But that really, the reason I hold that opinion and believe so is because, with dumping data in the warehouse, if you do the job, you kind of do the job. The data's in there fast and accurately, it works, and the rest is up to you in SQL and BI to kind of make it your own. When you think about operationalizing data, really what you're doing is you're helping business people tap into the data in your company and use it in all sorts of specific ways for their different business processes. So, our product, while we call it reverse ETL, it doesn't just look like an ETL product. It's not just always copying and pasting data from one system to another. It's really doing things like when a customer record inside of your warehouse meets certain condition, like they haven't used the app in a while, automate the creation of a Salesforce ticket so that your customer success team gets this alert of a ticket that says, hey, go check on this customer and make sure they're still using our application. So it's really building these kind of like business workflows off the data. And that's why we've started using the word data activation instead of reverse ETL as much, since ETL has this connotation to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Reverse ETL looks like, hey, I have ETL, I just need to reverse it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a very catchy term, so I was curious if you guys came up with it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So honestly, our customers came up with the term reverse ETL. I think we were the first company to embrace it from like a we are a reverse ETL tool. Reverse ETL is the right way to do things. This is the latest technology perspective. But our customers are the ones who inspired us to pick up this term. Initially, we just called it Hightouch, to be honest, and this was the problem we solved. But when we talked to customers, they would keep asking us, is it the reverse of ETL, or the reverse of Fivetran? And we said yes, that is a good way to think about it, but we never wanted to call our business something like reverse ETL until it just started happening so much organically. Like people started saying this on almost every call without us bringing it up. People on online data communities were using the term, VCs were using the term, and we decided, okay, it's time to like lean in and just tell the market that we're reverse ETL. And honestly, that was one of our defining decisions of like 2021. If I look at a lot of our marketing and business progress, not a lot of early stage companies at the stage we were at get to have a category created like that early in the life
Right?
cycle. And yeah, and one of the main lead sources for our business today is just people just Googling reverse ETL and seeing how it touches the number one result. So I think we're really glad we made that decision. But now as the company evolves, we need to have better terms to tell this full functionality of what we do, and something that's
So
understandable.
it was not enough to create one category, you're going
We
to
need to
create a
create two.
second category.
That's right, exactly. Well, we've been doing data activation stuff all along, but reverse ETL was a term that stuck, so we went with it.
And now you're trying to shift the conversation. Hey, it's not just that you take the pipeline and reverse it, it's really about what you do with the data.
Exactly, and yeah, I mean, if people call it reverse ETL, That's fine. Her product does that as well. But more so when we speak to a new customer, we really try to make sure they realize what Hightouch can do, past just ETLing data around, in terms of building these kind of business workflows off the data, as well as like if you don't know about ETL, you can still use our product. So it's, operates at a different technical level. And want people to understand that too.
Brings me a great segue to the next question, which is you mentioned several times like you want customers who show up on your platform to think about all those different possibilities of what they can do with the data. So,
Yeah,
can you talk us through some of the common use cases or maybe uncommon use cases?
common and uncommon. I love this question. So I'll start with a common one. I think that's always good. So for B2B SaaS companies, the number one use case that we often start with at B2B SaaS companies is actually on the sales side. So let's say you're a B2B SaaS company like Lucidchart, one of our customers that we have a case study with online. I use it as an engineer. I think most engineers use it at some point in their career. But they basically, they have tens of millions of users online that sign up and make these different charts. And the way Lucidchart's business works is they have online users, free accounts. They also have paid accounts where you might put in a credit card and pay N dollars per month per seat. And then what happens is as their customers get bigger and have more and more people at one company using Lucidchart, their sales team often starts reaching out to them and figuring out how to give them a bulk
Mm,
discount or a team plan or an enterprise plan. And if you look at how most sales teams operate and the tooling built for sales teams, it's not built for this product led growth type
no,
flow,
not
right?
at all, right? They usually have
Exactly.
their own pipeline and they feel that it totally competes with the one in the product.
Yeah, exactly. These things are not well integrated because systems like Salesforce are built around, just email addresses and leads and when's the last time I contacted this person or called them. It's not built around like how many users are in their account on my website or when's the last time
How
they logged
much are
into
they
my app.
charging on the credit card? Yeah.
Yeah, how many projects do they have? How many charts do they have? Just like all that custom rich information that you as a digital SaaS, as a SaaS business know about your customers, whether that's new ones signing up or ones expanding their usage over time. So really like our most common use case at B2B SaaS companies is if you have any sort of product led growth flow, whether it's for expansions or for new customer acquisition like Lucidchart, getting that information about what's going on in the product into the hands of your sales and customer success teams in Salesforce. So when a rep pulls up Salesforce at Lucidchart, given that they have Hightouch in place at Lucidchart, they don't just see when's the last time I emailed this person. They also see information about what that customer is doing in the app, which can figure out what's the best companies to reach out to where they can actually add value as a sales team versus just random ones. Or how do we host a really meaningful conversation with the customer because we know what's going on when we're going into it. So that's our most common use case in B2B SaaS companies. Across the board, I would say our most common use case is just helping companies use data for marketing. So, when you get marketing campaigns, you want them to be personalized based on your stage as a customer of a company, whether that's a B2C company or a B2B company. And all that data is in your warehouse. We help you get it to the ad and email and push, et cetera, tools
That's
you have in your business.
really doing critical work. I think every time someone shows up and kind of talks about their growth, in-product growth efforts being kind of divorced from their email marketing, I always remember this one vendor that I signed up, and then life got on the way, so I didn't sign up ever again. And then after a while, they started emailing me with those super advanced use cases. And I'm like, guys, I haven't even tried it yet. Can you email over some quick start, something for beginners? But it
Yeah,
was very obvious they had no idea. Like the campaign machine had no idea what I was actually doing in the
Yeah, it
product.
probably is just using like months since the customer signed up, but not actually considering, have they hit the golden moment that says they know how to use your product. So that's the type of information that's unique to every business in the data warehouse, not typically in the B2B sales and marketing tools, which are just based around leads and last contact dates and created dates or just simple fields like that, their address. And what we do is we help you get all that digital rich information you have about your customers into those sales and marketing tools so you can really take your kind of customer comms to the next level.
Yeah, I feel like this is so important for SaaS startups to realize that it's not just it all just adds benefit. Like there is a potential of damaging a relationship if the marketing is completely
For
outside
sure.
of your actual customer. You also
Yeah, yeah.
mentioned early on support, like that this was like your first thing you're trying to build before you realize that actually the support tools are fine. Can you tell us about the support use case?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. Like, let's imagine you're a company like Slack, and Slack has all sorts of different customers, from hobbyist customers to large enterprises using them, to mid-sized companies, like ourselves using them, and when a support ticket's written into a company like Slack, they have different support teams for different, tiers of customers, like enterprise support or mid-market support, or the long tail of SMB support. They also might route certain cases that come into certain people on the team based on how much that customer is paying Slack, or the customer sentiment. Maybe, if customer sentiment is low, maybe they get a ticket response faster. But to do all these like intelligent routing, or to equip, the support reps with information about, has this customer set up this feature or that feature, or how many people are in their account when they pull up a support ticket, you need to get all that rich customer information to the support system that's handling routing and the ticket interface. So that's what Hightouch does, right? You can just take any SQL query that pulls data from your database or data warehouse and say, I want these fields like ARR of a customer, tier of a customer, have they used this product feature or not, and just sync them to any sort of SaaS system around your company without coding, so that when you're using those SaaS systems, you have all the data in there that's allows you to intelligently communicate with your customers.
That's fantastic because I can see a lot of companies do kind of likelihood to churn score for
Yeah, exactly.
on the warehouse, and then it could be so important for the support team to know, hey, this is a risky customer. Be extra extra nice and send chocolates.
Yeah, and I think that ties into just an overall theme that we're seeing in businesses, which is that it's becoming increasingly easier to analyze data. But what hasn't really been innovated on is, what do you do with that analysis once it's done? I mean, we just see in the enterprise, especially, tons of work put into analysis. But then, the way they use that analysis is for just affecting long-term strategic decision making, when actually equipping people on the front line with that analysis in their day to day can create, massive returns for a business.
That makes a lot of sense. What is the uncommon use cases?
The uncommon use case. I missed that one earlier. Um, yeah, so I think an up and coming use case we're seeing, which really shows the breadth of high touch, and it really shows the breadth of high touch in terms of all the different things you can do with it in a company, and how general of a problem this is financial systems. So I'll give you an example here. A large travel company, it's kind of a competitor to Expedia, uses High Touch today to not only power their marketing, their consumer-facing marketing, for different customers in different positions in their life cycle, whether they bought a lot of products or a new user, show them different stuff, but they also use High Touch to power getting all the custom data they have about bookings and how much commission people deserve and changes to the reservation
Mm.
into their financial reporting system, or ERP tools like SAP or NetSuite or Oracle. So like, while Hightouch can be used for customer facing stuff, we can also just be used to like get the right data to the right places to power your business operations, whether that's like supply chain, logistics, finance. And in this case, we're getting, every time a booking's made on the travel website, we actually send that information over to, from their data warehouse, where they use to do analytics, all the way to their ERP system, so that all the bookkeeping processes happening in there every day, every week, every month can be closed out quicker without using Excel or CSVs, or running
Oh,
custom
so
pipelines
real
against
time
these,
financials.
yeah, against these like crazy, crazy APIs of these things, like these legacy ERP systems. So we're really a horizontal platform and can be used with any tool.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. I was also thinking that with the rise of product assisted sales,
Yeah,
suddenly to know how much commission a salesperson should make may require data product. Like, is the
It,
customer actually using the product? It's not enough to make the sale anymore.
it's a great call out. Yeah, anything usage-based billing, consumption-based billing, anything where you're charging by seats or by API calls or anything that can be affected in sort of like a digital way versus just like a human to sales talking way. Like you don't just tell your salesperson, I want to buy 5 more seats. You just use 5 more seats online and then you're billed for it after. In that sort of model, you need data in your invoicing systems and your sales systems, et cetera. So a lot of product-led growth companies use us in the same way for financial use cases now.
Fun, amazing. Is there any use case where you tell someone, actually, don't, please don't use Hightouch for that thing?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I think something interesting, a funny use case more so is we can connect to source, to production databases like Postgres. A lot of earlier stage companies use these as their data warehouse, or they want to connect to Postgres for like a low latency workflow or something like that. And sometimes people try to move data from one database to another database because we also support databases as destinations via Hightouch. So move data from one Postgres to
So they
another.
actually use you for ETL.
Yeah, that is not the purpose of Hightouch. And there's better ways to do that than the way Hightouch works. For example, companies like Fivetran that specialize in ETL actually have ways to listen to like the change log of a database and like replicate it over like the WoW logs, for example. So definitely we're not meant for this use case. We could be used in some haphazard way for this use case, but it's funny to see people use the product in this way once in a while. And we have to tell them, hey, like this is not a use case we're optimizing for. Another one I would say is if you need something really low latency, like something that's operating every minute or a couple minutes or something like that, data warehouses are getting faster and people are using it in faster ways. We believe that's the future, but a lot of people don't have data coming into their warehouse fast enough to support those use cases today. Um, so,
Yeah, the
so
reverse
we
ETL cannot be faster than the
than the
incoming
data
ETL, I
coming
guess.
into the warehouse. Exactly. So for most sales, marketing, finance, that are use cases, doesn't really matter. But for some of them, it can. So don't use this for like a forgot password email or welcome email or something like that, if that makes sense. Um, but you can, get the data, get the right data about your customers into a marketing system so that when you do send those emails, they're personalized,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
something
So
that if it's sent like an hour late, nobody cares is fine. Um, Versus, yeah, and it can get a lot worse. Like people sometimes try to like, oh, I have an IoT system, I need 50 millisecond. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely not a use case for us. Though we are seeing companies, connect their production database or like a replica to Hightouch to support some of these low latency use cases. And that is something we encourage to some of our customers as
actually,
well.
replica would be fine, right? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't have the
exactly.
same risks, and yeah,
Exactly.
that's pretty cool. So, what is one thing that people who do not do reverse ETL or haven't tried to use high touch don't really realize about the market that you can kind of enlighten
Yeah,
us?
it's a great question. So, I mean, one thing off the bat is definitely that we do more than just ETL, like, but we already covered that, right? You can build these
Yeah.
like workflows off your data. One kind of insight I have on the whole data infrastructure space is I believe that all data infrastructure, all software maybe, but all data infrastructure for sure is becoming more declarative. So I think this is a pattern we already saw in DevOps and infrastructure, where now people are using things like Terraform and stuff like that to configure their infrastructure. It's all moving to code and kind of a declarative model. But I think this is going to happen in data infrastructure too. So I'll take a step back and explain what I mean here. So in programming, there's a concept of imperative versus declarative. Imperative meaning you tell the computer exactly what you want to do. You want to loop over this data and save this variable and do that with this other one, etc. Declarative is more where you say, here's what I want to do at a high level. I want to take this data and transform it in this way and make it look like this. And that's the way, declarative is the way I see all data infrastructure moving. So this starts with the data warehouse itself. I mean, if you wanted to crunch, do some crazy aggregations and kind of custom analytics for your business, 15 years ago, you would need to roll your own scripts and programs via Python or via Java, or write your own applications to really do this sort of data crunching from scratch. Now you throw it all into a data warehouse and you put a SQL query on top of it, and something like Snowflake will figure out exactly how to run that in the most efficient way for your data, for your servers, resources, etc. And it's, a declarative model where you don't have to think about all the fine details. I see that happening for data integration too. So when the first class of like low code, no code tools like, MuleSoft, Tray.io, Dell Boomi, Workato, Zapier, even in some sense, which is a customer of ours now, actually. But when those tools initially brought data integration to the masses, they took things from coding, they took the concepts from coding, like loops and if statements and variables, and they brought them to a visual interface. So you could drag these blocks that represent different coding concepts and put them in
Yeah, and
UI.
then you have two branches for your if.
Exactly. And they just brought coding concepts to a UI. I fundamentally don't think that's the right model. I think what we're seeing is a more declarative model where it's like, okay, you have this data in your data warehouse. I'll help you accomplish this task, like create a Salesforce ticket under certain conditions, or this other task, like run a Facebook ads campaign on top of that data. So more of a declarative model versus like actually just taking coding and calling APIs and looping and stuff and bringing it to a UI to make it more accessible to other people. So something I'm just really passionate about and see as like where the overall space is going.
Why is it so popular?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the point I hit on at the end there, which is that the declarative model actually makes it a lot more accessible. So it makes, doing something like data integration or analyzing data a lot more accessible to people because they don't have to learn all these programming concepts, right? So like while, tools like MuleSoft or Workato or Tray were usable in a visual way, you still had to learn programming concepts like loops and if statements and stuff. And it's like a lot of complexity to manage. Whereas declarative tools actually don't make you think of all that complexity. They're more structured around what do you want to accomplish? Like in Hightouch, you can just say, here's a table in my warehouse of data. Here's a table in Salesforce of data, and I want them to be the same. And we'll figure out how. We'll only send the changes. We'll use bulk APIs. We'll do everything you need to do that in the optimal way. Just tell us what you want done instead of
Yeah, so
actually
you
like
basically you
coding it.
abstract away a lot of the details that
Complexities.
nobody really should care about anyway.
Exactly. Empowering people by abstraction versus like empowering people by empowering them to, do the same thing developers do, but through a visual interface.
And you feel the developers also want this model, though?
Yeah, I do, frankly. I mean, we see this in programming as well. Look at, even programming environments like Spark, right? I mean, they took, data transformation, data manipulation, data aggregation, and just gave a more declarative way to do this, where you can just express kind of what you want done, even if it's in code. So I think the whole model of software and infrastructure, data infrastructure is moving declarative. And I think it's just a very exciting trend that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So what's going to go declarative next?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's bound to go declarative next is um, the ML and kind of like machine learning space. So there's a really exciting company that's backed by the same VC as us, Amplify. It's called Continual.ai. It's super exciting what they're doing, which is basically allowing anyone like a data analyst to build simple prediction or machine learning models for things like predicting churn risk off just a data set and some settings. So just like how Hightouch lets you build live integration pipelines off a data set by a SQL query and a downstream system like Salesforce, just put some settings in and we just get the data in there on a recurring basis. They allow you to just build ML models that are computed live off the data warehouse, which is a data set, a SQL query, and some settings. And I think that's a space that's bound to need to be made more accessible to allow more businesses to take part in
Yeah,
that.
everyone can do SQL and not everyone can do machine learning. So it does
Exactly.
look, who knows what will people come up with now that will be an entirely new set of people who can
Yeah,
try their hand at machine learning.
I think there's an interesting concept here, which is that as it becomes easier to do more things with data, more people want to do things with data. So as the cost goes down, the demand kind of goes up. It's something that Eric Bernhardson, the old CTO of Better, like wrote about online. It's just like as the cost to do certain things in software infrastructure like go down, the demand goes up, and we see the same with data, right? Like as data becomes more accessible in a business, people want to do more with it immediately. It's not that
A
it's
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, I was thinking it's not a great analogy, but traffic, like the more roads you build, the more traffic jams you'll have, the more people will go by car. So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah. Like,
kind of this, yeah.
you know, people could travel to an international country via ship before, but when it becomes a lot easier to go via plane, there's a lot more demand. So I think it's the same thing we see everywhere. Like, new needs come up from new capabilities, really.
But don't you sometimes really want to do international travel by ship? I mean, I never tried it, but doesn't it look really relaxing and you kind of get this long break and
Yeah, maybe. I haven't tried it either. It sound interesting and probably expensive.
yeah, so one of the problems we've always had when we try to build data pipelines going out of the data warehouse into tools essentially owned by sales is that there's not like super strong controls on other side. So a bunch of stuff changes all the time. Someone comes in, changes the schema in the data warehouse, changing some settings in Salesforce, installs a new plugin, and suddenly like everything breaks and nobody really like the people who are responsible sometimes don't know enough about the other side, and sometimes like literally nobody really owns those pipelines.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, a couple things we do here to account for like the schema drift or like, people changing the models in the data warehouse or changing the models in Salesforce and things breaking. So, one is that I think these data warehouse systems are getting a lot more reliable in this way. Not the data, not the infrastructure itself. Data warehouse was always reliable, but the way people used it may not have been. But now there's kind of a trend with things like DBT of creating these golden tables in your data warehouse for things like your golden view of customers or a golden view of projects or a golden view of product usage that are really cleaned up, have standardized columns, and then everyone can kind of operate off that. You can use those tables in Hightouch. And tools like DBT that are really blowing up make this a lot easier for analysts to do without
Yeah,
pulling in
DBT
engineers into
is really
situations.
beyond just the tool, right? I feel like they changed the entire mindset of the
Yeah,
industry. Like people will now use CI/CD on those golden tables. They never did that before.
exactly. And this space is just changing rapidly, regardless of whether you use DBT or not. I think we see customers with, Snowflake and cloud data warehouses and the enterprise that are doing this approach, regardless of what tool they use to do it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
more of a
really not
workflow.
about the tool. It's about reliable engineering processes applied outside of traditional engineering, I would say.
Exactly. And making those accessible to you is what I would say as well, like SQL
Yeah,
first. So
exactly.
that's one thing going for us there. Like the data warehouse is having more stability around the models that we're depending on. Hightouch is just like an industry trend. The other thing is we just have a lot of like schema analysis on our end, as well as just like strict alerting when things like this go wrong or are about to go wrong. So, if you delete a column from your data warehouse or from Salesforce or it no longer exists or the types don't line up or something, we can alert on those things proactively to our customers because we've just built our pipeline in a really robust way that does that by like checking the schemas on both sides. And we also have like alerting capabilities that can go to Slack or email or like even Datadog or PagerDuty rotations or just like all the things you'd want if you built the best pipeline ever, but no engineer spends that much time building a pipeline to Salesforce because it's really boring. So it's never perfected and observable and monitored really well and all these things. But
Yeah,
our
exactly
goal is to
that.
just
Almost
bring
no
all that
one
to the
has
SaaS.
any monitoring on
Yeah,
these things. So uh, yeah, that's already a huge improvement. People sometimes discover after weeks that the data in Salesforce is super old because the pipeline broke
exactly.
and nobody knew.
And we just have all of that
So
out of the box, basically. Yeah.
yeah, do you also have something like integration with the, let's say, the data warehouse CI/CD? So if someone makes a change to the data warehouse that is going to break high touch, you will let
Like
them know.
flag it right
Don't
away
even
and
merge
like
this
your
one.
GitHub checks and stuff. Yeah, I think that's something our teams actually like put together with the DBT integration actually. So the ability to kind of like preview how the changes to a model would affect Hightouch. In fact, like we've done a lot here. So even all of Hightouch is version controllable. So you can use the Hightouch app, like the UI and everything to control Hightouch, but then you can connect it to a Git repo in the settings tab and everything will go into YAML files as you're changing it in the Hightouch app. So all the syncs, all the models will all be like replicated to these YAML files in
Definitely
Git.
modern engineering.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot we've built here to bring engineering best practices like to the high touch product, but just make them a lot more accessible. And that's another trend we're seeing across the data space too.
Very much so, I agree. So I don't want it to look like I am too wowed, but this sounds like you've done a ton, like for a 2-year-old company, in terms of, created the category, built the business, have all those really delightful engineering features, made sales teams a bit happier with their role and the data they have. Um, any like almost secret to your success or tips for other founders who are like, oh yeah, these Hightouch people are doing something really cool?
Yeah, for sure. I think first, there's no silver bullets when it comes to founding a company, right? Every company is different. Every founding story is different. And we've only done it once so far, and we're still early in our journey. So we'll take everything
Maybe
I
it
say
was
with a
luck,
grain of
who
salt.
knows?
You take everything I say with a grain of salt. But one thing that I think was really integral to our story and our success getting off the ground and hitting the flywheel as a start and finding a product market fit was keeping a really open mind and just like kind of not holding what we thought the product should be too strongly when we were in the product market fit finding phase. So when we're in the kind of soul searching phase, trying to find our early product market fit for the company, we knew the problem we wanted to focus on. We wanted to help these business teams use data better. But our initial solution was way off from what the market wanted. People didn't want another tool. They didn't want another dashboard, another interface. They wanted to have data like flow into the process they're already doing on a day-to-day basis. So what we ended up with was way simpler and way different. It was like total 180 from the initial approach we were building at Hightouch for serving our customers, which was actually creating this like customer dashboard internally. So one thing I would say is that for anyone looking to start a business, I really recommend to first get solid around the problem you're solving. If that problem is a really big problem, then don't be too held to what you think the initial solution is. Be flexible with that. We were constantly trying new things. Every week we were trying a bunch of different things, in fact, and we were super open-minded with regards to what our product should be, but we always knew we wanted to solve this problem, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of founders get really tied to like their vision for the product early on. I don't think vision like that typically works. Obviously, there's exceptions to it, but oftentimes the vision is shaped by our customers and shaped by initial traction that you get, and you really need to have a strong understanding and a belief and a conviction that there's a big problem that's solvable out there, and that's what's most important. If that makes sense.
That's a fantastic insight. Tejas, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all those bits of experience around reverse-ETL and declarative ways to build data infrastructure and data integration, and even tips for success of company.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Gwen.